What's up, everybody? Welcome to IDT Reviews. Tonight, three comic book artists are going to be reviewing and discussing Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm your host, Michael Pickard, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise.
Hey, I'm Johnny. I hadn't seen all of Justice League, the first cut, so I'd seen like half, maybe, of it. My expectations were very low, and I was pleasantly surprised. But there were definitely some glaring issues. I'll be excited to get into them. But overall, right after seeing it, I was mostly positive. And we'll get into the rest.
But joining us as well, fellow co-host and friend, Nate Wells.
Hey guys, Nate Wells. My sort of initial reaction to Zack Snyder's Justice League Zack Snyder is what I was gonna say. Yeah, kind of like Johnny, mostly positive. It's one of those movies I watched and I get the gripes people will probably have, but to me, the movie does what it should have done originally, which is just it's a sequel. It's another movie in this universe that feels like it belongs. The sequel to Batman v Superman, and that's really what I wanted. It's a very, very long sequel. But yeah, mostly positive on my end. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit, especially compared to what we got in 2017.
Well, that's definitely the thing we were talking about before we started recording, which it's hard to separate your review of this movie in light of knowing that there was a shittier version that we were shown 3 years prior, and
Right.
now we have this version.
Hard to look at it by
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, I was able to, and I have a fair and honest review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. But guys, like I said, I'm Michael Pickard, but I have some mixed thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League. About 20 minutes into the movie, the group I was watching with paused it, and I thought to myself, this movie is gratuitous masturbation for Zack Snyder. It's It's everything he loves. It is gratuitous because it inflates what could have been a 2.5 to 3 hour movie to a 4 hour runtime, and it's all because of Zack Snyder's inability to limit or restrict himself from the things that give him pleasure.
From the Zack Snyder stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's spot on, to be fair.
Yeah, but for me, and this will segue into our main conversation here, but for me, the biggest issue I had with Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I really wanted to love it, and I know all of the first reactions that were coming out were so positive, and I know you guys even really enjoyed it. And when you had messaged me that you had seen it, you both were saying, I've really enjoyed it, it's really fun, it's better than the theatrical, and so I went into it with the expectation that it would be. And it absolutely is. I want to preface that off the bat. It's way better than the theatrical cut. But from a fair and honest critique standpoint, there's so much fluff in this movie that does nothing narratively for a 4 hour movie. And it's so exemplary, like even in the first couple minutes, like I was saying, when Aquaman is swimming away from Batman and the Icelandic women start singing, you're like, okay, interesting. Like they're singing a song. And then the one picks up the shirt, gets the Jason Momoa whiff. I would have done the same thing, admittedly.
She does sniff it. Yeah, that's right. She does sniff it.
I would have done the same thing, admittedly, but what does it add to the story? And then there's stuff later in the movie where, even for example, all the slow-mo shots, or when the Flash is moving in slow motion, that scene where he saves Iris West could be a minute. You could really cut that down to a minute.
Yeah.
But there's so much emphasis on breaking the glass and the hot dog and brushing the hair out of the face. It's so much that doesn't add anything. And like I was saying to Nate, as much as I really loved how much time was spent developing these characters in contrast to the theatrical cut, there's so much left in it that serves nothing for the story.
Yeah. I actually, on that, I hadn't really thought about it. I hadn't really put my thoughts on it to words until you mentioned it. But it's kind of ironic that any time the Flash was on screen actually doing something, I kind of mentally prepared myself, and I was like, this is going to take a long time. Which is insane. It's the Flash. And anytime it was the Flash, I was like, oh, okay, so he's going to run really, really slowly. It's like, he's gonna be running fast, but this is gonna
Right.
last a long time, and we're gonna have to watch him like doing that weird run that he does, and then he's gonna have an internal monologue, or he's just gonna take ages doing anything. Like, this isn't even one of my major thoughts about the movie. I've just now thought about it.
Yeah.
But like, even when like he's moving at his normal speed, like that Iris West bit, and everything else around him is moving really slow. I seem to remember when they did that in X-Men. He is moving at a normal speed, but he's moving really slow also. He's not fucking doing, like, he takes ages to do anything. And it's like the X-Men scenes do that really well, and it's entertaining because he's moving at a normal speed and everything around him is stopped. So he's going around like doing a lot of stuff. So you're like, oh, this is fun. This is fun to imagine when everything speeds up again.
Right.
But it took a long time for him to do anything.
No, that's a fair critique.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, even in the Wonder Woman stuff, when Wonder Woman has slow-mo scenes in this film, she's also moving in time with the frame, as opposed to like the Quicksilver scenes in X-Men, what you're referencing, where Quicksilver is like, hey, move this, zoop, gonna push that guy's head over here. It's dynamic because he's moving at a quick speed, so you're an average speed, but to us, we're watching it in real time for him.
It's interesting you bring up Wonder Woman, and I actually like when you see Flash move like fast, you don't see it because I think he moves so fast. You know, because when he's like, I remember the scene where they're saving the people under Gotham Harbor going up the stairs, and he's just like, he appears at the top, he appears back down at the bottom, then he appears at the top. But there's the Wonder Woman scene where she's saving like the kids from the terrorists, and the guy just opens fire on him, and she actually moves really, really quickly. And she's doing this, and it's really fast, and it's actually funny now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, really the only time you see someone like in real time move superhumanly fast is Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
And because Flash moves so fast that you don't see it, which I don't disagree with, but maybe vary in those like slow motion scenes, maybe vary how fast you see him moving. So we can see him kind of like really getting after it. Or doing, whatever he does.
On the whole Wonder Woman thing, I think a lot of my positive review was down to the fact that, which is not really okay because it's a 4-hour movie and this is like a 5-minute scene. But I had already seen quite a few times the Wonder Woman bank scene in the original cut. And so when I saw it this time, I was messaging you guys and I was like, fuck, he's literally just, all he's done is recut it. But he's like, the way he's like sped up, the way she like chucks people and shit. I was like, this is fucking great.
It was good.
Really,
it was really,
cool.
really good.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
And
I think anytime she's on screen
good.
Was a positive for me.
Yeah.
I like the like chant thing that they do, for her like music.
I love that in the beginning, and then towards the end I was like, okay, this is going to be every time we see her.
It is every time.
Fit that in. So it was a little bit like
every time.
We started watching the movie with the subtitles on, and it was like it was something like ancient wailing was the subtitle when that happened. So like we made a joke of it. And we had to turn off the subtitles because every time it came up, someone was like, "Oh my god, how much ancient wailing is there?" Because it kept coming up in the first couple minutes of the movie. But actually, that was another thing for me that I thought was an issue that I haven't seen really anybody else discuss too much at length, but the score of this movie I thought was absolutely horrendous. And not that I know anything about music, so I can't judge or critique the music itself that Junkie XL composed for the film, but all of the music does not time with the action of the scene that it follows. So for example, the one that really stands out to me is the Amazonian fight against Steppenwolf. And Hippolyta is on horseback and she's running with the mother box from Steppenwolf. And there's the part where he shoulder checks her and she goes flying off the horse, right?
Oh, that was great. I like that.
It's not timed with the music to have a dramatic impact. And that to me was a really clear example of how the score itself wasn't being utilized to amplify the story. It was just music in the background. As opposed to like what I would have done in that scene, for example, was cut the music on that impact or have a beat on that impact so that it's dun 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 boom, she gets knocked and then she tumbles, then he walks up and he takes the box or whatever. It just didn't have any dramatic emphasis on the events that were happening, in contrast to it with the ancient wailing we just discussed. there was also all of this music in the film that was so directly on the nose that
Mm.
it was laughable to me that it was like, oh, if you don't understand the subtext of this scene, here's a song where it's saying all of our
Yeah.
gods are dead as Wonder Woman
Just telling you. Yeah,
visits the grave, you know.
There's this
See,
huge.
that's my gripe with the music is like the soundtrack doesn't work that well, but I quite liked the score. I'd have to rewatch the scene where Steppenwolf like throws the horse, which I
Yeah, I
thought
don't
was
remember
awesome.
that specifically.
I
Yeah.
loved that scene, but there are moments in the movie where the music does really enhance it for me. And Mike, we were talking about the scene before we started recording where they're all like in the Batcave and they're talking about how like, oh, the Mother Box can like bring people back to life, and they're all kind of like sitting there with the same look on their face. And Barry says like, well, I think we're all thinking the same thing, but I don't want to say it. And like the Man of Steel score is like slowly starting to swell up under the scene, and then
Mm.
Cyborg uses his powers to flash the Superman hologram up, and then the score like swells up into the full Man of Steel score. That was awesome.
That was good.
And I think that there are moments like that where the score really, really works. I think that the score works in that Wonder Woman terrorist scene
Mm-hmm.
really well. There is a funny thing, a little side note about that scene. I just wanted to bring up that it's funny because they want to blow the bank or whatever they're in. They want to blow it up. They're like, we're gonna level 6 city blocks or whatever the guy says. Send it back into the Dark Age. Whatever the fuck that guy wanted to do. And she takes the briefcase and throws it up and it explodes in the sky or whatever. But then she kills the terrorist guy by destroying that floor of the building.
Yeah. I literally have this written down because I was like,
I do
I
too.
like paused the movie to be like, she could have punched him. Why didn't she punch him? And then I really, I found it hilarious. I kind of almost put it as a plus for the movie because of how much
I loved it. I
the
loved
bit
it.
where she
I
turns
laughed.
around, her back is to a smoking rubble, and she's just like, "It's okay, kids."
Yeah, right.
It's like, I've solved everything.
Yeah. Thank God this building didn't blow up.
Yeah, you just saw a man explode into debris, but
Yeah, and we
everything's
literally
fine.
saw the police outside, like, fuck.
They're like, yeah, oh no.
The hat
Rubble's
showed
falling
it.
on the cars. Yeah, the head. That was just a little side note. I loved that, and also it's so funny.
Well, that was one thing that in the film's benefit was that all of the action and all of the action set pieces for that matter, whether it was the final fight scene, the flash sequence in that final fight scene where he reverses time, I thought all of the action of the movie worked incredibly compared
And much better than the other one, especially that final fight. The final fight is not good in the original. It doesn't work. This one, it lands. They work better as a team, I think. At the end of this one, you see them. A big gripe that I know that we have with the old version, the new version, and a lot of people have is that Superman's the guy. They're like, and in the original, like the goal of the movie is to bring Superman back to life to save the day. This one, Superman still takes on the whole league, but they work much better as a team. And you see like Wonder Woman and Aquaman kind of kicking Steppenwolf's ass the whole movie.
Yeah.
And so you're like, well, that's good to see because in the other one, again, this is not a review of this movie so much as it is comparing it to an older version.
Mm-hmm.
They just get their asses handed to them for the entire movie, and then at the end, that's still happening. And thank God Superman shows up, and he's like, "Is this guy bothering you?" And I'm glad that line wasn't in the movie, and Batman gets a goofy grin on his face when Superman shows up. But this one, Superman's still kicking his ass, probably more so than the other ones. But that final note, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, where the day is kind of saved, and they cut back to Steppenwolf, and he's just on top of Aquaman's spear.
Mm-hmm.
I lost it. I was like, oh shit. They just murked him, and it's good to have other characters with these really badass sort of moments of violence, whereas all of that was kind of saved for Superman in the original one.
Fucking love that they cut his head off and then sent it back into Apocalypse. That was
and then they just
so
look at him. they're looking at him through the boom tube, and it's funny because Darkseid's like, I don't even fucking like this guy. I'm gonna stomp on his head.
Yeah.
But they just look at him. They're like, what? We
Yeah,
cut your boy's
yeah.
head off. You know?
Yeah, it's just like that's his
Great.
fucking head, which is
Yeah.
good, which you wouldn't get in the Avengers really,
No.
for the most
No.
part.
They didn't
I
cut
do like
Loki's
that they
head
were
off.
just like, no, you know what,
You
we're
know?
chopping fucking heads with a Wu-Tang Clan up in here, we just send you back his head. I did like that it almost, boiled down to like, it was almost as simple as they just needed another really heavy hitter
Right.
to just keep hitting him, to just keep on getting him
Yeah,
till he
yeah.
doesn't get a break. That was pretty much all they needed, which I
Yeah.
liked.
Well, Nate, actually, you touched upon it a second ago, and it's kind of one of the things I really think benefited this version of the film, this cut of the film, which again makes the theatrical so much more baffling that they excluded all of this,
Mhm.
which were all of the moments that the characters were given to not only showcase their necessity on the team, their talents, their skill sets, but we also got so much to develop who they were and why they were in the plot.
Make them characters
Yes.
in the movie.
Exactly. So you were saying in the final fight scene, like the scene with Aquaman, with like the trident where he stabs him, like there's a moment of action to show Aquaman kicking ass, being a member of the Justice League, and showing why he's fighting this ominous threat to the planet. And same thing with Flash, like the scene we were talking about before we recorded, where he runs back in time, is just so visually interesting because like as he takes each step, the past is reformatting under his feet, and it's just a really cool visual. But on top of that, they executed a thematic through line with the beginning with his father when his dad's like, I don't want, like, I know you're so great. You're one of the best guys I've ever met, but you're not doing anything with your life.
Right.
And in that moment when Barry's running, he's like, you're right, Dad. Like, your son was one of the greats. It's time
And that's
back
him
to a through line. And
exactly, and that's him becoming a member of the Justice League because they make it a point to say he looks up to these people. He doesn't see himself as one of these people because he's like, Superman was my hero. He's such a nerd about Batman, which is great. He loves Wonder Woman. And so, yeah, that line where he's like, you know what, I am, you know, your son is one of the best of the best because that's his function on the team. As a speedster, as a force of nature, they failed. They died. They blew up. The world ended. And Barry said, if I break my rule, which is cool that there's like this threat to him even doing it, and I'm like, well, I can do this. It's the end of Superman the movie. I have a power and I can do this. He's like, I'll risk the consequences to fulfill being an equal member of this team and fulfill my role. Like, this is my role. I can clean up after they died. You know? They show like Superman reaching out and his flesh is reforming. Like they got annihilated, you know? And and that's another thing that I really liked, you know, that the team works better as a team and all the characters are fleshed out. Cyborg is a character.
He's a character. He's actually a character in this movie.
I felt like there were consequences in this movie and there were real stakes because in that moment they do fail. And when they're resurrecting Superman, instead of them just being like, I hope this works, it'd be bad if it didn't, Cyborg's going, wait, we shouldn't do this. Wait, we shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. And Flash is like, oh, are we going? And it just happens.
Going back to like the Barry setup where he's got this thing going on with his father and they pay it off later, not just with, Dad, look, I got a job.
Yeah.
Thematically, he feels like he's somebody now. Like he's achieving things with his life. And same thing with,
he's the Flash now, you know. He's a member of the Justice League with these Titans, you know.
But same thing with Aquaman for the same reason. Like we were talking about how they cut the scene with Volko, Willem Dafoe's character, that was a direct setup for the Aquaman movie. But that scene, as I said, actually got me excited to go rewatch Aquaman because Volko is like, not only is it set up with like the character of like, oh, your half brother's on the throne, like you need to take the throne. That stuff aside, Volko lays out Aquaman's thematic arc, which is you're of two worlds and you can't ignore both of them. And I thought that was a really great line and character setup. And then in this film, even though it's not executed in full because Aquaman's story then gets told in his own solo film, it provides you as a viewer with, he doesn't know what he doesn't have a place in the world. And even though he does these nice things for like the Icelandic fishermen and just like abroad, like he saves the boat with the guy and, you know, inevitably steals a bottle of whiskey technically.
Yeah.
He just walks out with it. Guy hasn't paid for
Just a
it.
dick about it the whole time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he does actually have a character underneath like this gruff exterior, because then there's a scene with the Flash where Aquaman's like, kid just lost his dad and we're expecting him to do this incredible thing,
Hmm.
and
Mm.
Barry's like, I didn't think you cared. Aquaman's like, I never said that. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like you get this turmoil within him of he's got these things he's dealing with, but he's still trying to act as somebody who can make change because he's Aquaman.
Mhm.
And same thing with
Yeah.
Cyborg. Like in the first
Right.
movie, as much as I'll admittedly say this, I don't think that Ray Fisher was great in the movie, and I don't think that's his fault necessarily. He's playing a robot, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good in it, not great. I agree.
I've read a lot of reviews afterwards that were like, "Oh yeah, the movie was like a masterpiece," and they were like, especially the acting was perfect, especially Ray Fisher. And I was kind of like remembering back, and I was like, "Was it? He was."
Yeah,
Perfect's a
Yeah,
strong word.
I liked
Good,
him.
serviceable is.
I liked his character, but I don't
Yeah.
remember ever being like, "Shit, this guy's really acting here." This is. I don't
Mhm.
remember that happening, but
well, that's true, because I wasn't blown away by his performance, and again, it's not any disowning of him as an actor, because I'm sure he's
Yeah.
I mean, he's been on Broadway. The guy has a successful
It's-
acting career.
yeah,
But
of course, yeah.
But I
To be fair, there's no moments of acting in the movie that I'm like, oh wow,
No,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
That's
nobody just kills it, you know.
Yeah, but to the Cyborg point, it's like I understand on some level why he was cut from the first movie. As much as it sucks for Ray Fisher, excluding all of the behind the scenes things that we have seen
Mhm.
come to light, but just from the fact of like he was cut essentially all of this character growth that his character has in the film, and he was kind of just this like, I'm just here for the ride character. Like he's just there in the background, like
Yeah.
like I'm gonna shoot at Superman. Like I gotta control the mother box. Like there's no, he's just there in the first version of the film. But in this, he's actually got some kind of agenda.
He's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
the
I
main
didn't-
character of the movie in a lot of ways.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize he was just kind of there in the original because I would have said he was
He's-
one of the protagonists.
Well, and that's the weird thing, because they almost hint to in the theatrical cut. They're like, there's moments where they're like, oh yeah, Cyborg is very important, and I'm like, I forgot he was in this. You see him in the background of some scenes, and he does some cool stuff like taking over the little bat walker thing,
Mm.
and Alfred's like, do I know you? And then you kind of forget about him, and then later on they're like, all right, Cyborg's got to save the day now, and you're like, wait,
Why?
oh, that's right, because I guess
Yeah.
I guess he was born out of the, like, all of that stuff is very in your face the whole time in a good way, where they're like, no, Cyborg's important, no, Cyborg's important, no, Cyborg's important.
Mhm,
And
yeah.
it justifies him being the one that has to separate the unity at the end. Because in the
Yeah.
theatrical cut, you're like, I get why he has to be the guy, but I wish he was more important as a
Mm.
character. And
Absolutely.
in this
Yeah.
one, he is.
One big minus for me, which carries over from Batman v Superman, really, is you guys know Batman is like my favorite fictional character. I still don't like Batman in this universe. I just don't. He was
Yeah.
like one. He was like one of my least favorite members of the team. I was just like, I don't really care about him. He's like nothing he said most of the time felt Batman-y to me. A lot of the time, I felt like I was looking at Ben Affleck wearing a Batman costume.
I see that more in this one than in BVS. My big issue in BVS,
Yeah.
and it carries into this one as well, is like the killing thing. I don't mind if he's ultra violent. I don't mind if he's scary. I think he's scary in BVS.
Yeah.
Batman in this one is that version of Batman made lighter, and I
Mm.
don't think that carries over very well. And I know he's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna kill Superman, because that's his thing in the other movie. And so he's come out of that, so he is going to be a lighter character, but he still has Gatling guns mounted on every piece of equipment that he owns.
Yeah, and I think we should set some time aside for the last future sequence bit because I want to talk about that. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
there were like just bits. There were like moments like the bit where Martian Manhunter comes down at the end, and I don't know. I'm obviously not a writer, and I don't know how I would write it to be more like Batman. But like for some reason, just the way he like walks out and then he's like, "Do I know you?" and stuff. It's just I'm like, "Who are you? Come on!" Like,
One thing that's a huge issue for me with this movie, and I was talking about it outside of our chats, but I was thinking about it, was the fact that this movie banks on the fact that you know outside of this film who Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a failing because a lot of the stuff they expect from you as the viewer is to fill in like your perception of Batman. And it's like you said, like I don't think the Ben Affleck in this movie, he's not Batman. Like in Batman v Superman,
No.
I thought he was excellent as that character, but in this, I don't get any sense of him being Bruce Wayne. I don't get any sense of him being the Dark Knight. And same thing with Henry Cavill in this movie. Like Henry Cavill shows up and he's like, "Oh, hi Lois," and she's like, "You're talking again?" He's like, "Did I not talk before?" Because he's coming out of like an amnesiac state because he was dead. But like, you're supposed to just fill in the gaps and care about him because he's Superman, not because the film has made you care about him. But I would say the opposite, like because they gave the benefit to the three supporting Justice League members who aren't the Trinity, Cyborg, Flash,
And it's good that they did that.
Yeah, you get emotionally attached to these other characters, and you're not expected to pull in your outside perception of them for
as an audience, and they do show up in Batman v Superman. Should they be, more fleshed out in this one? Because I'm watching this movie right now, I still need to be emotionally attached to these characters. Yes. But it is good that they did say we're introducing these characters because this would have been the introduction to Aquaman. It is our introduction to Flash and Cyborg. I agree, we do know who like Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are, and we need to get to know these. But I agree also. It's like, well, don't just say like, well, you saw Batman in the other Batman movie. Like he's just gonna be Batman. So it's like, well, also, but give him some character moments, where he's Batman.
To talk about the ending, the one note I wanted to say, and this will parlay into the ending of the film, the tags, I'll call them. They weren't really the epilogue. I think they were chapters.
Yeah.
And I said this to Nate before we started recording, and it ties back to my entire philosophy of this film of being Zack Snyder having his way with film.
And us
as the audience,
and
is that there's a cut of this movie that's 2.5 hours to 3 hours that includes a lot of the character stuff you need to care about the characters. It includes a lot of the action beats to keep you entertained. It puts some of the exposition a little bit towards the beginning so you're less confused halfway through the film what the plot is. And, of course, it cuts out the unnecessary bits, like some of the musical notes, like Aquaman's Icelandic choir, or Aquaman walking out onto the pier, which
that was so long and so on the nose. Like the song was like, "There is a king and a kingdom," and I was just like, really, Snyder, you're just gonna.
Well, as
gonna do it.
As the people I watched with called it, we were all laughing because we were like, it's like a cologne commercial. The music, the slow starting out, the water, the throwing the bottle. But
it really was.
It comes back to things that could have been cut from this movie. And the two ones that I think are quite egregious that could have been cut are the nightmare sequence, because firstly, we're probably not going to see that film, and it doesn't add anything to this story. Like, we've seen this story resolved. Superman's not evil. He's back from the dead. This is that story. But then also, all of the bits with Martian Manhunter. Because as I said to Nate, when he shows up as Martha Kent and says, "Lois, you need to come back to the land of the living. Like, we want you here. You got to move past Clark and live your life." And then Lois just goes about her life again. She's like, "You know what? That was really great." But as I said to Nate, Lois Lane calls Martha Kent a week later and goes, "Mrs. Kent, it really meant the world to me what you said the other day. And honestly, like, I needed to hear that. And now I'm going to go and try to live my life more." And Martha Kent's like, "Sweetheart, I don't know what you're talking about." "What? I was not at your house." And then Lois Lane's psyche is broken because she's like, "I'm seeing
She thinks she's crazy.
I'm having conversations with people who aren't here." And then she just becomes a recluse again. But it defeats I should say, it cuts short the impact of that scene when all of a sudden Martha Kent walks out into the hallway and she's like, "I've done what I needed to do." And it's like, Martian Manhunter, what's your agenda here?
Yeah, why? Why now? Why with these people? And I completely agree, because I found that moment like really. I actually, surprisingly, I was watching that scene and I was like, oh, actually, this is kind of a little bit hard hitting. This is a good moment between the two of them. I've never normally cared about Lois Lane and Martha.
Hate that it's not really Martha.
Yeah, and then they walked out and it was like, oh, Zack Snyder just wanted to be like, bam, Martian Manhunter. I did it. It's like, you
But
didn't
that
need
opens a
to.
whole other can of worms because, like, hey, Martian Manhunter, you've been here, man. The world's almost ended like 3 times now.
Yeah.
What have you been doing? And then he shows up
Why
at
did
the
you
end
step in then just to have a
and he talks
conversation
to
with somebody
Bruce Wayne
come
and
up?
he's like, you guys did a really good job beating Steppenwolf. Maybe I'll be around. Maybe I'll help out. If I'm Batman, I'm
Yeah.
like, nah, we fucking got it, dude.
Yeah.
Don't worry about helping us out now, man.
Why?
Also, he's like, now I have a stake on this planet. You've been an American general for like 15 years, dude.
So
What do you mean you don't
long.
have a stake on this
Yeah.
planet? Like,
It's
you
so
are
long.
there
And I
protecting
really,
the planet.
I don't know whether I'm missing something, but it's like, why wouldn't he just? Because he can just change the way he looks. So he's
Mhm.
not like got his identity at stake.
Right.
He can just be like, do you know what? They need someone to step in. Doesn't matter whether it's without context. These people could really use a green, strong alien to just jump in and help them out. They'll just be like, cool, good, you're one of the team. Come along.
Thank you. Yeah.
What are some elements that you thought were really cool, that worked for you well? What elements on a whole did not work for you, or like small Easter eggs that you were like, that worked or that didn't work? Because we're talking about Martian Manhunter. And for me, I thought it was really cool to see Green Lanterns on film being Green Lanterns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But I didn't like in the exposition where Wonder Woman's like, and all of the gods fought alongside man. There was even a Green Lantern. And she's probably
Oh,
talking
yeah.
to Batman, and Batman's like, what the hell's a Green Lantern?
Yeah,
What
what
the
does that
fuck?
mean?
Like, that's
Yeah.
another thing for the audience that's like, you know what this is, but
Yeah.
you don't have to tell us, because if it's for us to know what he is and you show it to
Just
us,
see it.
yeah,
You're
we'll just
about
be
to see it.
excited. Yeah.
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 I have a list of things I'd
Oh.
just like to. It's just like a list of stuff that I just like things that I liked or didn't like. But Johnny, sorry, you can go on. I cut you off.
Okay, all right. Well, I was just gonna say I really liked the Wonder Woman bank scene. I said that.
Yes.
That really, like I said, did the film a big favor in my eyes. In that I was from then, because it also helps for the film that I was watching it while I was also drawing, so I was kind of like didn't mind the runtime too much,
Mhm.
and like I was like tuning in and out of some bits. So like that part, I was like, shit, I think I'm really enjoying this movie. And then for some of it, I'd go back to drawing, and then I'd come back in and be like, yeah, that was cool too. I kind of liked the Aquaman chanting, but again, I think I probably looked away for how long it lasted. So I
It
just saw that
lasted a
instead
long
of like
time.
being like, and then jumping back into the water, you just don't see him go back in, and then they all start chanting some eerie thing, and I was like, ooh, that's cool. It's kind of
Yeah,
scary.
yeah, right.
I didn't fucking like what I was alluding to before was basically all of that last nightmare sequence that everyone was excited for.
Mm.
I fucking hated like every minute of it. Basically, I hated all of it. I hated even down to minor details like Deathstroke's stupid fucking hair, like down to the bigger moments of like the whole time after the trailer. There must have been some people, me kind of as well. I was waiting the whole time. I was like, okay, well the movie's not over because we're about to see the Joker and Batman talk, and this could win back. Like this could make me like Jared Leto's Joker again. God,
I'm
no.
a fan. I'm a fan of it.
Oh man, I hate it.
I'm a fan of it.
I hate
Yeah.
so much.
I don't know why, but I like it.
I hate it.
It's
I
funny.
hated it.
It's funny because Johnny, you've been the median for the most part, where Nate has been more optimistic about the film. I was very harsh on the film coming out of it, and you've been the median on that regard. But I'm very in between you two on this, where I liked the interaction because I know that Zack Snyder said I wanted to do this because it would be a shame if we had a Joker and a Batman in a universe that we never got to see interact.
I'm
And that was
glad the
important.
scene exists for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For that reason alone. I'm glad it exists for that. It doesn't need to be in the movie.
No.
It doesn't. But I'm glad that we get to see him talking.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad about it, but probably not for the reasons Zack Snyder wanted. Because I'm glad about it because I watched the scene and I was like, cool. Hope they never do those characters again because I fucking never want to see any more of that. I hated it.
There was some good stuff though. And I know Johnny, you agree with me. Batman looking the Joker in the eye and saying, "When I kill you, and make no mistake, I will fucking kill you," doesn't work.
Yeah, it was
While
trying
he's
to be
holding,
really
while
cool.
he's holding a gun.
Yeah, the whole thing was just
Yeah.
like, it was me watching and being like, cool. At the end of a movie that I mostly enjoyed, it was a shame to end it on me being
There's
like,
just like a
okay,
big
cool. Cool.
There's a
I
big
don't.
fuck you, Johnny.
Yeah, this has reminded me that I don't ever need to see Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck's Batman ever again because it's not. It's just all off. It's just way off and wrong.
Just real quickly, I have written at the top. This was something I really liked when Superman shows up at the end and steps in front of Steppenwolf's axe, and it just hits him. He doesn't even try and block it,
Yeah,
and he just says, "Not impressed." I liked that.
that was cool.
One, because it was cool. Two, that, and I could be totally making this up, but that axe strike to me kind of paralleled the flashback scene when Darkseid first comes to Earth, and Ares cuts him like down the middle with his axe, and it takes Darkseid out. They have to leave Earth because Darkseid got fucked up by Ares. And to me, that signals that's the same blow. I think it was on the opposite shoulder or something. It's the same blow, and so to me that, and I'm looking for stuff here. I know I am. But I'm like, okay, so that signals that they will win. Superman is stronger than Darkseid because the same thing happened, and Superman didn't even flinch.
Doesn't even move, yeah.
So that's just again, I'm reaching there. I know I am, but I thought it was cool.
Go ahead. There won't be any more movies, so you might.
Right, and I don't want to. I don't want to see that in movies. You know, I like the Darkseid. Like, well, get the Armada. We'll do it the old way. I like that. It got me excited. I don't need to see that movie. I have very 300 Amazon stuff written, which I really like because I love the movie.
I really like all the Amazon stuff.
I like the I'll bathe in your fear, and then they chant in unison. We have no fear. It was very like Leonidas leading the Spartans.
Yeah, that was something I wrote as well. I just wrote that no, we have no fear moment is really cool.
Something I really, really liked, a scene that I love to death, is Alfred and Wonder Woman making tea.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, no, I don't even want any, but you're making it wrong.
Yeah, that was really.
And he has to step in. And we already talked about Martian Manhunter. I have a bunch of stuff written, and then I have written down really in really big letters.
What would you guys rate the film out of 10?
Partially when I was watching it, for like the way I was watching it, where I was working at the same time, I was like drawing at the same time, like I said. There were a lot of points where I was like, I kind of want to consume like 4-hour-long media. It's really good for working, and you can just tune in on certain scenes and be like, this is really cool. And then other scenes.
True, yeah.
But it's not like any other film. And so if I was going to recommend it to anyone else, I wouldn't. Even like comic book fans, I'd probably be like, where it's 4 hours long.
You would have
so if you're
to
gonna
say
sit down and watch it, like
it's 4 hours long. You would if you recommended it to somebody,
long.
You would have to say that.
And I would say it's 4 hours long, and it's like a good action movie. For 4 hours long, that is, it should be more. I think overall, I would give it a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. A 6.5. A 6.5 out of 10. But my review is still mostly positive because I genuinely don't want to be mean to him, but I don't think Zack Snyder has made a really, really great film. So my expectations were like low. And it was better than I thought it was going to be. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it, and there were some scenes that I thought were really, really cool.
Yeah, I like what you said, you know, and me and Mike kind of talked about this a little bit before, where it like it's not paced like a regular movie. It doesn't watch like a regular movie, but it's not quite like a mini series that I just binged. But it's probably more like that than a movie. I think if it was gonna be a movie, like even if it was 3.5 hours long, I would, you know, probably feel better about it. But I'm glad that we got to see everything. So like, I don't think that they shot anything for Justice League that we didn't see. Nobody can say like, well, release the Snyder cut of the Snyder cut now because there's more. Like, I don't need any more Justice League. I saw enough. And yeah, my review is mostly positive. I would say probably right now I'm the number that comes to mind is 7 out of 10. And I like it more than Batman v Superman, I think.
I liked it more than Batman v Superman, which is crazy considering I was watching Batman v Superman and I turned it off after like 2 hours because I was like, there's another fucking hour left. This movie doesn't deserve to be 3 hours. And I just sat through this 4 hour long movie. So
yeah.
But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, it must be better then.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that we kind of did fall within the median of the 10-point scale. We're all kind of in that same area, but we did differ in terms of Nate being slightly more positive with that 7, Johnny, you being like 6, 6.5, 7-ish area. But I came out of the movie, and I think I had messaged this to you guys, but I would give it a 5 out of 10 because for as much as a lot of it worked for me, there's so much that you have to consider. Like, you can't just ignore the fluff of the film that you want to exclude. You can't you can't rearrange the scenes in your head to make sense. You can't be like, well, if I put the exposition scenes at the beginning, it like flows really well. So like that's basic.
You can't do that because they didn't do that.
These chapters that are introduced to break up the film don't have their own beginning, middles, and ends to them. Like, for example, the scene with Wonder Woman and Cyborg on the street where they're having the conversation and Cyborg flies away. My brain mentally went, okay, that's going to be the end of a chapter. But it wasn't. It kept going with other scenes. And for me, what this film was, what this cinematic experience was a compiling of all of the footage that they took and no care or concern with whittling it down into the core element of what it's supposed to be. Because as a story creator myself, I think one of the more important things to take away from this movie is the hubris of you might have this expansive idea for a story in your head. Like I did with Duck Bill, like I've told you guys this project I'm working on. I went way too far with who's this guy and what's their backstory and why is this and what is that when it's not needed. And I had to go back and rework what I had because I just fluffed it up. I took a bike pump, I stuck it in, and I just pumped and pumped and pumped, and it just it became so swollen that I couldn't handle it. And that's what I think this movie is. All of these things are inflating the runtime, the narrative, and they're not placed together or taken out, for that matter, from this timeline to make a cohesive narrative. And even though things worked, and even though things were way better than the theatrical version, this still didn't work for me as a film, which is in turn meant to tell me a narrative. And so for me, I have to give it a 5 out of 10 because half of it, as much as I really enjoyed it and really liked it, I have to keep in mind all of the things that really ballooned this story into being what could have been a TV series, but it wasn't executed as a TV series. But it had chapters, but the chapters didn't mean anything other than bathroom breaks. So
I think, ironically, with the chapter or the part structure, if those were episodes, if they had released this as a miniseries, I do agree that like those sections need to have some resolution within them. Because they're kind of just arbitrarily thrown in there. They don't really segment the story into different, chapters, really. But I think if they did, because I know that they threw around the idea of like doing like a 4-part or whatever mini series out of it or whatever. And I'm glad that they didn't, because I don't think that the story works on that level.
No.
And it works oddly as a movie. It's hard for me to think about this as a movie, but it also doesn't work like a series. I would think, ironically, that I would need more stuff if they did the mini series.
If they did a series, it would be like, and Mike's right. I was thinking when we were talking about the chapters, because I'd kind of almost forgotten about the chapters. But if they were, if it was a mini-series and they just released it as it is, but they were episodes, at the end of every one, you'd be like, that was a weird episode.
But guys, that just about wraps up our review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to be checking out more movies in the future. We're going to give you our insight as comic book creators to those movies. But until those movies come out, we got nothing for you. I've been your host, Michael Pickard, joined by my wonderfully talented co-hosts and friends, Johnny Wise and Nate Wells. Make sure you guys check out our podcast, Ink Drink Think, the main show on our channel. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.